Hello, my name's Lori Arwood, and I'm the staff counselor at True Life Church in Jefferson City. I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy and a doctorate in Christian counseling, and I've been licensed in the state of Tennessee as a marriage and family therapist for over 20 years. And so today we're going to talk about the economic impact, job loss, uncertainty of our financial future, and how that's affected all of us, and how it has impacted our mental health. So there's current research out there that says that 76% of Americans believe that because of what we've been dealing with COVID-19, that it's going to push our country into a recession or worse. 76%. And so that's not just a benign figure that is related to the economy. If that many Americans feel that way, that brings emotion with it. And so when we think about worrying about economic crisis, what main emotion does that trigger in us? And for most of us, it triggers a sense of anxiety. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the anxiety of dealing with the financial pressure that a lot of us have been under because of the coronavirus. So anxiety is one of the most profound consequences of all this. And so we're going to try to understand that a little bit and then look at practical ways that maybe we can manage or deal with that anxiety. Anxiety is made up primarily of uncertainty, the unknown, fear, and lack of control. Well, if that doesn't describe a little bit to me the past 6 weeks of our lives, then I don't know what does. I think that there has been a lot of uncertainty. There's still uncertainty. There's the unknown. There's fears that maybe were there before and have been increased or exacerbated by all of this. And then there's a lack of control. And there's been so many things that we've experienced in the past few weeks and that we're going to continue to experience that are out of our control. So money is a very hard subject to deal with and for people to talk about. There's another statistic that says even before we dealt with the coronavirus, this is just in normal times that was there, is that 77% of married couples or couples have a hard or difficult time or can't really talk about money. So that's a very high number too. So when you take that with most people having fears over money, finances, and the economy, and knowing that money is one of those top things that is very difficult to talk about or causes stress in relationships, and you combine those two things, if that's not a recipe for anxiety and tension, I don't know what is. And so we know now that there is, that this has produced greater anxiety in all of us. Some of the most Googled questions in the past 3 to 4 weeks have been, how do I manage anxiety and how do I manage stress? Those have been some of the top Googled questions. And so that's something that's on everyone's mind. The prescriptions for anti-anxiety medications and antidepressant medications have risen in the past month by 34%. A lot of the telehealth that even primary care doctors have done during this time is related to anxiety. So we know that the climbing levels of anxiety and stress, much of that is related to the economic distress that many people are feeling and the impact that it's having and the financial pressure people are finding themselves under. So when so much is uncertain or out of our control, what are some practical ways to manage anxiety and stress that's related to finances? Well, I think we have to look at it in several different ways, and we have to know that, as in everything, we sort of sometimes have to talk to ourselves and say, okay, in these situations, what can I control and what can I not control? Because so many times a lot of our anxiety comes from us trying to control things that we can't. And so sometimes just really focusing, and instead of just being overwhelmed by emotion, asking ourselves that question, what in this situation with finances, with my job, with all of these areas, what are things that are under my control and what is not? And the things that are under my control, how maybe can I approach those differently? How can I look at those differently, think about those differently? But the things that fall out of my control, sometimes we have to choose then to just let go of, because the more we try to control things we can't, the more anxiety we feel. And so we want to avoid denial when it comes to this. If you're single, if you're in a couple, then you want to avoid denying the conversation or dealing with it and look at things realistically. Problems we ignore don't just go away. And so the longer usually that we ignore something, actually not the better it gets, but the worse it gets. So being able to sit down and look at our budget, to look at the impact, to look at the facts and figures instead of just focusing on this sense of fear and the unknown. What can we know during this time? And look at that. Do not deny that. Fear of the unknown is often greater than just dealing with what is. We need to avoid numbing or avoidance, too much screen time, too much alcohol, drugs. All of those things help us numb or avoid maybe for a time, but they tend to make anxiety and the issues that we have worse, not better. And so we want to avoid doing those things. We want to seek help where we can. If we need to have a conversation with our bank or lending institution, some faith communities in the area or community services offer a financial coaching type ministry. We want to look at local charities or what's available in our community as community resources, or in our faith communities as resources that they may have. We want to get support from family and friends. And then not everyone has been directly impacted yet by economic issues. So for those of us maybe that have not had a direct impact yet, ask ourselves, how can we maybe help others? How can we find people that are in our family or in our community or in our faith communities and find ways to minister and serve and help other people as they're having harder times than we are? And then we can practice daily ways to cope with anxiety and stress. Rest, daily exercise, eating a healthy diet, trying to limit caffeine, which for some of us is really hard, but caffeine is one of those things that usually increases anxiety if you're already having issues with that. Accepting that we cannot control everything. We need to be very honest and realistic about naming and defining what triggers or worsens the anxiety or the stress, identifying that for ourselves, giving ourselves a timeout. We like to sometimes do that for our kids, but sometimes we need that too, a timeout in the day. If you feel that anxiety or that pressure building, doing that by listening to music, going for a walk, putting time and energy into others. If you're part of a faith community, maybe tapping into prayer, but just giving yourself that time to where when you feel that building, that you give yourself permission to not have to think about it for a few minutes. And that's different than denial or numbing or avoidance. It's making that decision to do that. Looking into those community resources, reaching out for support, taking deep breaths throughout the day, spending 5 to 10 seconds taking good deep breaths and letting those out slowly. And that does help with anxiety and lowers our heart rate and just gives us kind of that moment to refresh and renew when we feel anxiety building. And as always, if you feel like you need help beyond that, contacting a mental health professional during this time to help you with the anxiety, but taking steps to identify it and not deny it, not to numb it, not to avoid it, because we've all been impacted by this, and especially in economic ways, and that has caused lots of anxiety in people. And so being able to address that head on and face that, and so you can better manage what you're dealing with financially. Thank you and have a great day.